Brian, it is time for the moment that we've been waiting for here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We're talking about the offensive breakout players for the 2026 season. Now, we're copying what we did last week with the defensive breakouts. And now, just a friendly reminder, there's different levels to breakouts because there's going to be some names that we talk about that some people in the chat, and I guarantee it's probably still going to happen, and that's okay. People are going to hear a name that we're going to say, I think that guy broke out already last year, and that's fair. There's different levels to it, right? And so we're talking about what 3 levels. First one is you didn't play much last year. Now you're a key part of a rotation. The second level of a breakout is, hey, you were a key rotational player last year. You had your moments, but now you're stepping into the starting lineup or, given the position, playing starter level snaps. And then finally, the last level of the breakout is, hey, you were a starter last year. Now you're a dude on this team. We saw what you could do in your first or second year as a starter. Now it is time to kind of burst onto that national scene and be that guy that we all think that you can be. So with that in mind, we have 4 breakout players each. We'll snake them back and forth. And then obviously, like we do, there's always other players. Because, Brian, it was a little bit more difficult for the offensive side because there were so many options. There were on defense as well. Yeah. But I felt like defense was a little bit more clear-cut. This one, it's a little interesting.
And I think they play more. I mean, with offensive line, you've got basically who you think are the 5 starters, and you could pick some of those guys. Defensive line, you could pick 10 different guys because they're going to play 10 different guys. So I think that makes it interesting, Trev. And so I'm going to start off this time. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to bring this player's high school film up because we were just talking about quarterbacks. And so it might be fun to remind us of what he was as a junior. We just watched junior film. So we're going to remind ourselves of what he was as a junior in high school. And that's obviously CJ Carr. And watch just a little bit of film of while we talk about CJ, reminder a little bit of his junior film. But I'm going CJ Carr. CJ Carr had a level 2 breakout last year. Didn't play and became a pretty good player for Notre Dame last year. Pretty good player. Set the program's all-time record in passer rating last season and didn't just break it, Trev. He destroyed it. He was over 168. The previous record, which was tied with Jimmy Clausen, who tied it in 2009. Before that was by Bob Williams back in the 40s. So obviously a very impressive record, and then also had one of the 3 or 4 best yards per attempt averages in program history as well. CJ last year ranked in the top 5 in passer rating, ranked in the top 5 in yards per attempt, had a really outstanding freshman season. He had an outstanding season for a freshman, a redshirt freshman. Now the breakout that I see from CJ is you go from being a really good redshirt freshman quarterback to you just become an elite quarterback, period. No, for his age, for his experience, it's just now he's an elite quarterback. And that's the breakout that I see for CJ Carr this season. And, just you start to ask yourself, like, okay, am I over? Like, I try to go through this in the offseason because if you don't stay in the film, if you just try to just remember off of when you watched it and broke it down in September, October, November, it can kind of, remind it of, oh yeah, I'm remembering all the big time throws, but I'm forgetting when he missed that read and did this and did that. And I try to stay in the film of these guys. And so I'm going back and watching film with CJ and I'm like, good Lord, this kid's really good. And then you start looking at some of the things. You say, man, if he can improve there, man, if he can get better at throwing the deep ball, remember how good he was against Arkansas, throwing everything but go routes. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he missed 3 go routes. And you're like, he threw for over 300 yards and absolutely torched Arkansas. And I'm coming out of that game saying, dude, he could have been better. He missed Malachi Fields wide open on a go route. And I'm critiquing a kid who went 22 of 30 for 354 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no picks, and only played 2.5 quarters on the road against an SEC team. And I'm like, he should have thrown for over 400 yards that game, Trev. Should have. Not could have, should have. And you start thinking, dude, if his game takes another jump, even if it's just a normal year 2, now I have experience jump where he's better with protections. The pass protections are set more consistently. The run checks are made more consistently. The post-snap decision is a little bit better that, like I talked about, a perfect example. I've said this before. The double slant 3rd down completion he had against Stanford that converted a first down. He hits Little quick inside slant to Will Pauling and moves the chains on 3rd and 6. A more experienced CJ Carr will bang the outside slant to Jordan Faison, even though his read technically was correct. He's going to see the squatting safety in the soft corner and say, this is quarters. If I bang that outside slant, he's turning and running. Those are things that you're going to see now that he's got more experience, I hope. And if he's a better, like just, and I'm talking year 1 to year 2 starter growth, that's it. That makes him a Heisman contender, in my opinion. And I think we're going to see some really big things from CJ Carr this season. So that's why he is my numero uno breakout player for Notre Dame this year.
I mean, I agree with you. And believe me, you're not alone in that sentiment. We talk about it on the show all the time. Our friends over at FanDuel think the same thing. He is still the favorite currently to win the Heisman Trophy. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. Along similar lines, Brian, my first breakout player, I'm also along the same lines, talk about somebody who's going to make that jump. And I'm talking about offensive lineman Gerby Lambert. He flashed last season, and he started all 12 games as a redshirt freshman. Even when he was rotating in the Miami game, he was rotating with Sullivan Absher, but then he quickly solidified himself as the starting right guard at Notre Dame. And then, due to an injury, he took 1 snap all season at left tackle, and you and I are under the assumption and under the belief that that was the best snap a Notre Dame left tackle had in 2025. Gerby is a player that I think is going to go from, okay, you were a good starter, had your up and down moments as a redshirt freshman, to I think he explodes onto the scene. Back at right tackle, back on the exterior of the offensive line, hopefully in 2026. He is going to have an All-American caliber type of season, and we're going to be talking about him in a very similar way of, hey, I had the same talk about Leonard Moore. Hey, in 2025, can you be good just for a corner, not really good for a true freshman? For Gerby Lambert, it's, hey, can you be good as a redshirt, or can you just be a good offensive tackle, a great offensive tackle in college football, not just great for a redshirt freshman? That's what I view the type of breakout for Gerby Lambert this year. All the tools were there. You're going to have a 5-star caliber player now starting at one of the edges. I think Notre Dame's going to get a bump in their play from the right tackle position. As you guys are going to come to find out as the show goes on, offensive line is going to be a common theme here, because we believe that a derivative of a lot of their success this year on offense is going to be won or lost in the trenches. I think Gerby Lambert's going to play a huge role there. There were moments on film where he absolutely looked like their most dominant offensive lineman. And then there were other times where you kind of watch it. It's like, yeah, it's a redshirt freshman. It's a 19 or 20-year-old playing in his first year of college ball. I think this year, a lot of that gets put behind him, and he starts dominating people on a weekly basis. So my number one guy is going to be Gerby Lambert.
Well, 5 Adam, who I believe is an Alabama fan, said if the Notre Dame offensive line pass blocking is great, CJ Carr will win the Heisman. And that goes right into what you're talking about here with Gerby Lambert. I think this is a big one, Trev. I think Gerby is a guy that has a chance to be a really special player for Notre Dame. We saw it last year. I mean, you could argue by the end of the year, the most impressive film of any of the players was him. I did that mid-zone breakdown, so I haven't got to the rest of them yet. I've got all off season. And now that I know we won't have a lot of spring access, more of that stuff will be able to come out. I'm not complaining. I'm saying, like, more of that stuff will come out during the spring when we don't have practices and things to go by. But when you watch it, you're like, there's one guy constantly further downfield than everybody else, and it was Gerby Lambert. And that's a good thing. On zone, you want to mid-zone, you want to initially work laterally, then you want to work vertically. One of the issues that I thought Notre Dame's offensive line had last year is they didn't get a great vertical push. They would do it well laterally, but they couldn't get a vertical push, except for Gerby Lambert. I mean, there were so many times he's driving his guy 3-4 yards off the line. And you're like, dude, when his footwork gets cleaned up a little bit and he gets a little bit more experience, like, this guy's going to be a monster. So, Trev, you think he's going to be a top-tier breakout this year, correct? Like, you're talking about going to postseason honors and things along those lines. I completely agree with you. I'm actually going to kind of flip my order up a little bit, Trev, because I think it's going to flow better this way, because I'm going to stay on the offensive line for my next pick. And I'm going to go Anthony Knapp. And the reason I'm going Anthony Knapp, look, I thought Anthony Knapp was going to take a jump in year 2, and he did. He didn't take quite the jump that I thought he would. I thought he was going to be an All-American caliber player. I just don't think the Notre Dame offensive line as a unit played well enough to get All-American status. And as good as he played in the last 10 games, you can't get dominated as much as you got dominated in week 1 and be an All-American, in my opinion. You know what I mean? and the Miami guys absolutely dominated him. So when I look at this one, Trev, I think Anthony Knapp is poised for an All-American season as well. And part of the reason why is I think you're going to finally move him inside. And, we have a video out explaining why we think that is and where that justification comes from. But I just think inside you just turn Anthony Knapp loose. And now he doesn't have to play in space the same way. His athleticism plays extremely well inside. His power plays well inside. And you don't have him playing on an island anymore where he was just never comfortable. He doesn't have to do these deep threes, these vertical pass sets that, you got to let Ruben Bain get a running start and then smash into you, 5 yards down the field, Now you're coming off and you're anchoring pretty early in pass pro. And so I just think those things are why I think Anthony Knapp, if this in fact happens and they move him inside, has a monster All-American caliber breakout season. And the combination of these two is a big part of the reason why I do think the Notre Dame offensive line is going to be outstanding in 2026 is because of the foundation of those two players.
Oh, absolutely. And you need your anchors on the offensive side of the ball. And I think that's going to be those two guys. They're your most experienced returning starters. I mean, Gerby Lambert started all 12 games. Anthony Knapp has 27 career starts under his belt right now, heading into his junior season. I love that pick as well. My next pick, I'm going with the running back. I'm going with Anias Williams. And it's not going to shock me if the other running backs I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I'm sure we'll talk about some more of these guys down the road, but I'm going to go with Anias Williams. And I would argue, Brian, be interested to get your thoughts on this. I would argue that Anias has the opportunity to have a multi-tiered breakout, going from like a key rotational guy to a dude. Now, a lot of that's going to be dependent on Gerby Lambert and Anthony Knapp having the types of breakouts that we think, because he's just a different type of runner than Jeremiah Love. But Notre Dame has strung together a really good track record of guys that have gone from being a rotational guy to the number one guy, having that multi-tier jump. Audric Estime was the rotational back in 22. He was splitting carries with Logan Diggs. He takes over as the primary guy in 2023, and he has 18 rushing touchdowns. Jeremiah Love also rotated a little bit in with Audric Estime in 2023. He becomes the main guy in 2024, bursts onto the national scene, and he's an absolute dude. I have all the reason to believe that opportunity is now on the table for Anias to go from hey, he's a rotational guy. When he gets in, he's flashy. We've seen him explode. I have all the reason to believe that he's also going to have a breakout. At the minimum, he goes from key rotational guy to a good starter. But in an ideal situation, he goes from key rotational player to he is now adding to the conversation of Notre Dame's kind of just cranking out running backs. I think he has that ability with his abilities as a pass catcher, where Jeremiah Love kind of had to catch up to that. Now, some of that was usage. Some of that was things that he individually had to work on. I don't think it's a mystery that Jeremiah Love worked with the wide receivers quite a bit this past offseason and in the spring. Anias Williams is already there. And so the dual threat ability that he brings to the table as the number one running back right now, I think is exceptional. And so I have Anias Williams as my second breakout player.
And unlike a lot of guys who were just kind of backups, we've seen him in big, high leverage situations, from him as a freshman. He's played in the Orange Bowl. He's played against Georgia. He's played against Ohio State in meaningful snaps. Meaningful snaps. We have an Alabama fan in our chat today who's really ticking me off, Trev, because he keeps stealing my thunder. Okay, Five Adam, stop stealing my thunder. Okay, man, just give me a second to say it. My next breakout's Will Black.
Yeah.
And he just texted. He's like, Will Black. I'm like, come on, man. Just give me a minute. Let me get this one out. Will Black is my next breakout. And he's that kind of I'm not going to jump too far into this with Will Black just yet, where, he's going to be a freshman All-American. Let's see how he does in the spring first. But I think he's going to go from a guy that played no meaningful downs to a solid starter at least as a first-year player. I'm going to hold off on kind of making that big jump for him to be I think he's going to be a freshman All-American caliber player for Notre Dame this year, like Gerby was. There's going to be some great moments, and then there's going to be he looks like a redshirt freshman, which is exactly what we saw from Gerby. So my projection for Will Black, Trev, is really just in line with how you described Gerby's growth so far. Showed immediate flashes in 25, By the end of the year, arguably their best offensive lineman, redshirt freshman, then going into the redshirt sophomore year, All-American. And I think we're going to see a similar jump from Will Black. Now, is he capable of becoming like a Joe Alt type star in year? Sure, but Joe Alt started like 5-6 games his freshman year. You know, I mean, just that experience, I think matters. But Will Black has elite talent. I think he'll be like CJ Carr, Gerby, Lambert, Tay Johnson, freshman All-American good, not All-American good. But freshman All-American good is going to still be pretty good, especially if he has an All-American next to him at left guard, who I'm predicting Anthony Knapp to be, and an All-American on the other side in Gerby Lambert. Like, these are the reasons why I'm thinking this offensive line could be really good, because now the talent's not the question anymore. The talent now is like, okay, having guys in the right position is not as the question anymore if they go with what we think they're going to go with. Now it's about, can you coach them up? But that's why I have Will Black as my next breakout player for the offense.
Love the Will Black pick. My third guy, and I'd be remiss, and Salty would also be remiss if we didn't talk about Jaden Greathouse in this discussion. But it's an interesting one, because I know he's going to break out. It's just a question of what degree. I can't consider him a rotational player, even though that's the capacity he was used in 2025. I think Jaden Greathouse has the opportunity to be a dude. Now, he had that same opportunity in 2025, but due to some unforeseen circumstances and usage, and then obviously the injury, the biggest thing for him is going to be, can he stay on the field one way or another? If he is, and he builds that connection with CJ Carr and continues to build that rapport, I think Jaden Greathouse is in for a stellar season. Now, I know everybody in this chat, myself included, is obsessed and loves stats. I don't know what that number is going to look like, but what I can tell you is that I think in crucial moments, like we saw against Penn State and like we saw against Ohio State in 2024, like we saw against Texas A&M this year, albeit it was 2 receptions, they were money receptions. Like we saw it all throughout 2024 in meaningful moments. I think one is going to be your guy. And that's what I think we're going to see from Jaden Greathouse. That's going to be his breakout. Basically a much more athletic and big play version of an Old Reliable. When I think of an Old Reliable receiver, it's like, hey, they're never going to end with a gaudy stat line, but they're sure-handed and they're going to move the chains for you. Kind of like what Sharon Peak was for that Clemson offense. You know, they had like Mike Williams and Artavis Scott, but when they needed to convert a third down, they got it to Sharon Peak.
Yep.
I think Jaden Greathouse is going to be that big play weapon combined with, hey, he's also Old Reliable. So I have him as my third breakout player. I know I'm kind of going back to back here because I predicted him for a breakout this past season, but I really think the stars are starting to align for Greathouse this year.
I love it. I want to see it so bad. There's just something that I wonder if Mike Brown sees Greathouse the same way we do.
Yeah.
I just still can't get past the whole, you're going to push Will Pauling past Jaden Greathouse, even before Jaden Greathouse got hurt. Because look, a position coach can slow a guy's development down if he doesn't think he's the player that we think he is. But, you know, we'll see. Maybe it was where Jaden wasn't as healthy as we hoped he was or thought he was. I mean, there's a lot of things that could factor into it, and I hope those things are the case. But the one thing I'll point out too, Trevor, is you look at the production for Malachi Fields in the first 4 games compared to the next 4 games after Jaden Greathouse got hurt, they weren't even close. He had 15 catches the first 4 games, and he had 8 the next 4 games after Jaden got hurt. He had 48, 77, 78, and 72 yards in the first 4 games, and he went 44, 29, and 52 the next 4 games. I do think because teams were defending Jaden Greathouse early in the season. Like they had to focus on Malachi, they had to focus on the running backs, and they had to focus on Jaden. When Jaden went down, a lot of the pass game focus, you can go back and look at the film, went to Malachi. And I think that took some of that pressure off too. And if Jaden can show early, if him and CJ, I think one of the biggest keys to the Notre Dame's 2026 season being successful is I want to see them force the issue to Jaden Greathouse early. Let everybody know the Jaden from the playoffs is back. Because you do that, now all of a sudden it's a lot harder to lock down the outside guys as well. Next thing you know, Jaden Greathouse has 3 catches for 30 yards and Quincy Porter goes off or Jordan Faison goes off and you're like, man, you know, Jaden didn't do a whole lot. Yeah, look how they bracketed him the whole game and you got one-on-one outside with Jordan Faison and he's tearing that corner up. And I think that fact, you could see that last year as well. But he's going to have to – teams aren't going to be afraid of Jaden Greathouse anymore because of what happened in 2024. he's going to have to prove it in 2026. But if he can do that, then I think this offense takes a big jump. Because I think Will Pauling was a nice player last year, but his production was primarily system-driven. And you think of the plays against Arkansas, he catches 2 balls for 50, 60 yards against Arkansas, and they were both wide open throws where just nobody covered him. It's not because he was that great of a player. It's just they were kind of covering everybody else. So it was a lot of system-driven production. And he was a nice player for Notre Dame. Jaden Greathouse has the kind of production where it's like, dude, that was Jaden Greathouse driven. Think about his big catch against Arkansas compared to the ones Will Pauling had. One guy's wide open. The other guy's making a crazy, ridiculous, acrobatic back shoulder throw and getting his foot down. You know, I mean, that's the kind of thing he can do. You think of the catch he had against Texas A&M. And I still say if the O-line would have given them protection, given CJ protection on the first sack on the final drive, Jaden Greathouse was torching a dude off the ball. He was about to catch a ball for 25, 30-yard gain. And so if you can get him going early, that's going to have such a significant impact on the run game and the rest of the receiving core. Got to get him going. My number 4, Trev, I'm going to go away from the line because I've had a couple linemen. I'm going to go away from the line, and I'm going to go James Flanigan. That's where I'm going with next. I'm going James Flanigan. I think James goes from a guy who played 4 games to a red shirt to being a really good part of a 2 to 3 man tight end rotation. I think James is going to end up being one of the top 2 tight ends. It would not shock me. It would not completely shock me if James ends up being the number 1 tight end this year. I'm not ready to predict that just yet, but I think he's capable of it. You know, he's 6'6", 250, good vertical athlete, strong blocker. Like, he's going to have some blocks this year that, like what he did against Pitt, remember the block he had on the counter, touchdown run on the counter? He's going to have about a couple of those a game where you're just like, dude, did you see James Flanigan just destroy that guy? You know, and this is partly why I'm excited about the run game, because remember Cooper Flanigan's block against Indiana on Jeremiah Love's 98-yard touchdown run? You're going to start getting a lot of those 2 guys in the field together this year, and I think that's going to really help the run game. The Flanigan brothers are going to be like you remember, was it the second Mighty Ducks or the third one where they played for Team USA? Remember the two Bash brother type of dudes, right?
Yeah.
When they just like put them in, like that's going to be some 12 personnel plays this year with Cooper and James Flanigan.
They're going to be the brothers of destruction. It'll be like Kane and the Undertaker. Like that's what it's going to be.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I think run blocking at tight end is going to look a lot different this year. When those 2 guys are on the field together. Now the question is, what does he do in the pass game? And that's ultimately going to be what determines whether he's a bottom tier drop, breakout, or a tier 2 breakout, where he becomes like, that's your guy at tight end. It's what does he do as a pass catcher? Can he get open? Does he understand the pass offense? Does he understand, how to find the soft spots in the zone? He was pretty much just like a vertical player in high school. He averaged like over 20 yards a catch. They would like just throw him the seams and throw him over top because he was just bigger and faster than everybody else he played against. I mean, at his high school, he ran like a receiver for the people he played against. And he's 6'5", 6'6". So he just was able to dominate people. At this level, you gotta know how to run routes. You got to know how to find the soft spots in the zone. You know how to need tack leverage. You got to know how to use your hands properly. There's so much that goes into it. That's the part where I'm a bit of okay, I need to see that from James to determine what level breakout he gets to. But if he can become just a solid pass catcher in this offense, I think he could have a tier 2 breakout. I think James Flanigan has a chance to be a really good football player. But at the very least, he's going to be, to me, a 5 to 10 catch guy. At least that's a dominant run blocker. That's tier 1. If he's a 15, 20 catch guy and a dominant run blocker, then you start getting up into tier 2.
Oh, absolutely. Love James Flanigan. Very excited to watch what he does this spring. I'm with you. For my 4th guy, I'm actually staying in the wide receiver core. And really, you could go with either one of the 2 Ohio State players here, but I'm going to go with Quincy Porter. Mostly because I don't think that there's as much in front of him to get on the field as Mylan Graham. Counter is Mylan Graham is probably more physically ready. He's been in college a little bit longer, but in front of him, he's got guys like, Jordan Faison and Jaden Greathouse, potentially Caden Finley, Elijah Burris, players like that. Quincy Porter, the boundary position is relatively open, and he has a body type unlike anybody else's on the roster. He's 6'4". He's like 197, 200 pounds. There's no other 6'4" receivers yet on the Notre Dame roster. And so And so I think that he could have a breakout this season. Going from what he was at Ohio State, he would get in very sporadically, different situation because he was behind Jeremiah Smith, to where I think that he has the opportunity to play starter level snaps this year. I do think that we're going to see more of a rotation this year from Mike Brown and Mike Denbrock, but I think we're going to see a lot of personnel groupings that include Quincy Porter to the boundary. He has all the physical tools in the world. His contested catch ability is fantastic. He brings a little bit of that of what was lost with Malachi Fields, who's getting ready to perform this weekend. But I have Quincy Porter as a breakout. I don't think that he's going to be, an All-American caliber breakout. I mean, it'd be like a freshman All-American caliber. It'd be sick. And I would not be upset. It sure would be. Wouldn't hurt their chances of winning a natty. But I have Quincy Porter as one of my breakouts because of the skill sets that he brings to the table. I think it matches well and it marries well with a lot of the other skill sets that the other players in the room have. So he's my fourth guy, Brian.
I mean, him going from 4 catches to 50 plus is not unheard of. It's not abnormal. I mean, we see this all the time, Trev, at receiver. I mean, Notre Dame has had this happen multiple times. I mean, Golden Tate caught 6 passes as a true freshman, and then the next year he catches 58 for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. We saw that with Equanimous St. Brown in 2015, catches 1 pass for 8 yards. The next year he comes out, has over 50 catches for 961 yards and 9 touchdowns. Saw this from Will Fuller. 2013 as a true freshman, he has 6 catches for about 160 yards. Goes out the next year, has 76 catches for over 1,000 yards, and I think it was 14 touchdowns. This is not an abnormal thing at wide receiver. It's a position where 1 year of experience is enough for you to kind of go out there and take that jump. I'm just not going to predict him to make that kind of jump. Just like I didn't predict that Will Fuller was going to do it. Like, that's asking a lot. But he's capable of it, and I would argue so is Mylan Graham. I think those are 2 young guys. I think Notre Dame, and I'll say it again, I think Notre Dame has 5 young players that are capable of monster breakout seasons. And obviously the 2 Ohio State guys get a lot of the attention. Quincy Porter, like you talked about, rightfully so. And I think your point about the reason he's the most likely is because he's at the position where there's the easiest path to get onto the field, where Mylan Graham's got to compete against Jordan Faison and Jaden Greathouse. But I think Mylan Graham's the other. I think Cam Williams is one. I think Micah Gilbert's one. And I think Elijah Burris is one. I think those 5 players all have the talent to have a breakout season. If one of them has a breakout and we just get normal Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison, this receiving core is really, really good. If 2 of them have some level of breakout, first, second, or third tier breakout, this receiving core becomes ridiculous. If 3 of them do, this might be the best receiving core in the country. I'm serious. I'm not being hyperbolic. That's a lot of ifs, right? And that's why we're not predicting it to be the case, but the potential's there. And that's just 3 of 5. And that doesn't even get into Caden Finley. That doesn't even get into Bubba Frazier or Devin Fitzgerald or Braden Robinson. Like, we're just talking, like, there's a lot of guys we're not even bringing up. Just the guys that are returners. If you just need 2 of them really to step up. If 3 of them do, man, it's going to be a fun year. And they're going to have, in my opinion, one of the best quarterbacks in the country throwing the ball to them, which certainly helps. Certainly helps quite a bit. So those were mine, Trev. Let's just mention some other guys that we kind of were looking at in this conversation as well.
Yeah.
I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, one of the ones that I'm keeping my eye on, and the name of the game for him is literally just stay on the field. It's Ashton Craig. I think that this offensive line could be exceptional this season. We talked about Gerby Lambert. You talked about Anthony Knapp and Will Black. Oh, by the way, they're 6'8", 325 pounds. Sullivan Absher is going to most likely start at right guard if or until 6'6", I guess technically now 6'5", 330 some odd pound Charles Jagasaw gets back if he's deemed healthy enough to play. But who's going to anchor this
in the fall?
Oh, 100%.
He'll go from 6'7" to 6'5" to 6'6". You know what's going to happen.
Yeah, he was just feeling tall that day, I guess. I don't know, standing up a little bit taller. Who knows? But one of the anchors of the offensive line that we haven't talked as much about this season because of the injury is Ashton Craig. When he's on the field, I fully believe that he is a top 10 center in all of college football because their offensive line is better. We can go back and look. Statistically, their units are better when he is on the field. in pass protection and in the run game. But the biggest question for him is, will he be on the field? If he is, the ceiling of this offensive line is exceptionally high. And it's still very high if Joe Otting is the center or if they kick Anthony Knapp even further inside. There's a lot of different combinations that they can have. But Ashton Craig is my next breakout player to kind of, if he plays a fully healthy season, it would not shock me if at the end of the year, number 70 in the blue and gold is being talked about as one of the premier centers in college football. Overcoming all these injuries, anchoring this offensive line, his abilities. But a lot of that is just kind of pertinent around his health. And if he's healthy, he's one of the best centers in the country.
There's no doubt, Trev. I'm actually doing some math right now because I've pointed this out before with Billy Schrouth, and it's sort of true for Ashton Craig as well. So I'm going to give you a number here in a second of what Notre Dame has done in the run game in games in which Ashton Craig has started. And the number is actually kind of ridiculous. So if you just give me a second to add these all together, it really is an impressive number. So just give me 1 second. He went out of the NC State game, right? That was the last game he played in?
Yes.
Okay, so Ashton Craig has started 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. He started 12 games in his career. And in those 12 games, Notre Dame has gone for at least 190 yards in 7 of those 12 games. So in games where he's played or he's started, Notre Dame has averaged, 2,473 yards divided by, what did I say, 12?
Yes, sir.
They've averaged 206.1 yards per game in games where Ashton Craig has started. They've also averaged 5.5 yards per carry. So they're about the same yards per carry in that stretch as they are overall, but they average more yards per game by about, I think, almost 10, a little over 10 in those. So he's been very good, Trev. I mean, you go back and watch him, his first career start where he was like the guy. Like, I don't count the 3 starts in 2023. Those were, guys were injured and, Zeke Krug. I'm talking about when he was like whole offseason, like, dude, we're counting on you. You go watch him against Texas A&M. He was very good in that game. Him and Billy were very good in that game. Just got to stay healthy. That's the big key, Trev. If he's healthy, I think you're spot on. If he's healthy, he's going to get a lot of love as one of the better centers in the country, assuming he's back to full strength. I'll quickly mine. I think one of the other receivers that we were talking about earlier is another one. I think one of Mylan Graham, Elijah Burris, Cam Williams, Micah Gilbert, one of those 4 will break out. I'm leaving Quincy Porter out because you already talked about him. I think one of those other 4 has some level of breakout, whether it's tier 1 or tier 2. I'm not saying, okay, this guy beats out Jordan Faison or Jaden Greathouse, but like Mylan Graham going from 6 catches to basically doubling up what KK Smith did last year would not surprise me. Being a 20-plus 350 to 400-yard guy next year would not surprise me. And then we're talking about him having a top-tier breakout in 2027. Cam Williams doing that would not surprise me. Micah Gilbert doing that would not surprise me. And Elijah Burris doing that would not surprise me. So I do think we'll have some one of those guys will kind of jump in at the very least that bottom tier level of breakout.
I agree. And an argument could be made. We talked about this when we were putting together these lists. And a strong argument could be made that you need at least one of them too. It's a fine line between the you need to and the would be nice to have. I think with this receiver room, it's kind of a blend. I agree with you. My last guy that I'm going to talk about to keep your eye out on is tight end Cooper Flanigan. I think he's starting to get a little bit of that, like, kind of left behind, forgotten about. And I understand. He was expected to be the bona fide tight end 2 this year behind Eli Raritan before he got injured against Indiana. He was working his way back, similar to Billy Schrouth, to play in the playoffs, especially if they got that break and he would have had the time back to recover. But now a lot of the attention's going to James Flanigan, rightfully so. A lot of the attention's going to Ian Premer, rightfully so. I think Cooper Flanigan enters this offseason with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder of like, hey, let's not forget about me now. I have like 6 career catches and like 3 of them are touchdowns, okay? Like, let's not forget about this. I was our best run-blocking tight end before I got injured. And so he brings a little bit of that dual threat ability that an Ian Premer brings to the table, that a James Flanigan brings to the table, and he's been in college the longest. So Do I think that he ends this year as, an All-American tight end and a Mackey Award finalist? No. Would I be upset if that happened? No, I would not be. But a breakout for him is he becomes like what a lot of Notre Dame tight ends have been before in the past. So if you're not a Michael Mayer or a Tyler Eifert, you're still a darn good tight end for Notre Dame. I could very well see something like that coming for Cooper Flanigan. So he's the last guy on that list for me, Brian.
I'm going with a running back. Which one that'll be? Don't know yet. But I just think between Kedron or Nolan James Jr., one of those two is going to emerge as the number 2 or even 1B running back this year, where it's a 1A, 1B type of situation. There's a world in which Anias Williams is just the guy this year. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. He has the ability to be the guy. 1,000-yard rusher. He could be, Kyron Williams to this offense. There's also a world in which the running back room looks a lot like 2022, where, one guy rushes for 900 something, the other guy rushes for 800 something, and the third guy rushes for 400 something. That's exactly what happened in 2022. I think Audric is like 920. I think Logan was like 822, and I think Chris Tyree was like 444. I think that was the spread of what we saw in 2022. I don't know if the third guy is going to have that this year because, again, we don't know if J1 Sider is going to play a third guy. But I definitely think there's a world in which there's a 1A, 1B, and those two guys are going to be in the battle for that, in my opinion. I think, look, Nolan James gets overlooked. I think Anias is a little bit overlooked. They're just Kedron healthy is going to be a stud. Well, yeah, if he's healthy, he could be a stud. There's no doubt about that. These freshmen are studs. Yes, they are. There's no doubt about that. I just also think Nolan James is really flipping good too. And I think both of those guys are going to go into spring, as long as they're healthy, with a chance to say, hey, we're not anointing anybody at running back. It may be 1A, 1B, but I'm 1A. Like, that could also happen. And not because of not thinking Anias is really good. It's just that's the talent in that room. Like if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I'd probably right now put my money on Anias being that guy. But I wouldn't put much. You know what I mean? I'm playing with $10 chips, Trev, not $1,000 chips in this one. You know what I mean? Like, I'm hedging my bet a little bit. I might put 20 on Anias and then 10 on, and this guy 10 on that, that kind of thing, because I just think the running back talent is better than what people think. Are they Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price? No, they're not. But you know who else doesn't have that? Every other team in college football this year. Nobody's going to have a running back room that dynamic at 1 and 2, in my opinion. There's a couple that are going to be, maybe close, but not quite what those two guys are. Notre Dame is still going to have, to me, one of the 5 to 8 best running back rooms in college football this year when it's all said and done. Would I rank them in the top 5 right now? No. There's too much inexperience and injury questions, but like by the end of the year, I think they have a shot to be in that range. And it's one of these two guys breaking out will be a reason for that.
Agreed completely. Before we get out of here, Brian, I did have a question for you. Do you have anybody in mind that's like a dark horse that you could see over the course of the offseason that we haven't talked about much on this show yet, but, through spring and then what we hear in the summer and the fall that we might start talking about a little bit more consistently?
I do.
What do you got?
Sullivan Absher. Yep. See, you shouldn't ask me the question if that was your guy. Because great minds think alike. Trev, like, if I was sitting by Trev, I might have got punched in the arm right now. Like, I might have got, but no, like, here's the reason I go with Sullivan Absher, because number one, he was solid in his starts last year. He wasn't great. He was solid. First-time starter. And he's a guy that I think most people think one of two things about Sullivan Absher. Well, he's the weak link of the starting 5. I don't agree with that. The other thing that I think a lot of people think are he's holding down the spot till Charles Jagusah comes back. And honestly, that might be true. If Jagusah comes back and he's 100% healthy, he's going to be hard to stay out of the lineup for very long. He's just that talented, assuming he's back to full strength and full skill and all that. But if I'm Charles Jagusah, the longer you're out, the harder it's going to be to supplant Sullivan Absher. Now that he has a year under his belt, Trev, he played some left tackle in high school because they were a triple option team. So they'd sometimes move him to right to left, but he was primarily a right tackle. I've always felt he looked a right tackle in high school. I've always felt he just looked a little bit more comfortable playing right-handed. And I think the move to right guard is going to be a good one. I think Sullivan Absher is a guy that not a lot of people are talking about. I think they're just waiting for him to get beat out by to Jagasaw. And again, that may happen. That when you're in a room this talented, somebody talented is going to get beat out by somebody else really talented. But I think if Sully is in the lineup all year, people are gonna be like, dude, like you know who he could be? He could be the Alex Bars of this offensive line. I've said this a million times. Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey were studs in 2017. But Alex Bars does not get enough attention for how good he was in 2017. I mean, you want to know how good Alex Bars was. Just go back to the touchdown run that Josh Adams had against USC in 2017, the long 80-yard touchdown run. I want you guys later go back and watch that play from the wide angle, the NBC angle. On that play, Alex Bars steps, and the lineman doesn't come with him. Alex takes his right arm and throws the guy into the A-gap with one hand, and Josh Adams cuts right behind him into the hole. That guy wanted to be in the B-gap. Alex threw him into the A-gap with one hand, and Josh cuts right behind him for an 80-yard touchdown. And I'm like, he was a dog. And he doesn't get enough credit for how good he was that year because of the other studs. I think Sully could maybe play some of that role for this team. Robert Hainsey was that way. Never got the credit that Aaron Banks and Liam Eichenberg and Jarrett Patterson got, but man, he was good and steady week to week to week. I think that's what Sully Absher could be for this Notre Dame team in 2026. I really do.
Agreed, man. I'm very excited to watch him just learn and grow in one spot. It's going to be the first time he's been at Notre Dame where they're just going to plant him at a spot and say, okay, go be great.
I hope. Yeah. I hope.
Yeah, here's hoping.
Yeah.
Because they need to, but Sullivan Absher was mine too. Doesn't get enough attention, but he's going to play a very vital role. I mean, he was one of their best offensive linemen against Pitt. He was. And he was going nose up on Francis Brew from time to time, who I don't know if you saw.
Oh, my gosh. I saw that during the thing where he just puts up 475 and the guys lose it. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, awesome. He puts up 475 like I was putting up like 135 back in my freshman year of high school. Like that guy's a freak. He is so strong. Had to get that in there. But, yeah, Sullivan Absher was mine as well. Great pick.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you throwing me that hanging curve, by the way.
I got you,
Trev, we did have a super chat that I wanted to bring up before we get out of here.
From Battle in the Trenches. Appreciate you. Asking for prayers. I had an Uber driver the other day that as we were talking, he told me that his 8-year-old nephew passed away due to complications with sickle cell anemia. Also, please remember Irish for Life in his procedure tomorrow.
So Irish for Life put a text in the chat earlier about how he's got a medical procedure. And he deals with a lot of different, he's a disabled vet, deals with a lot of different medical issues, and we always battling through them, and we always pray for him, but he's got a procedure tomorrow. Didn't get into what, but that's what Chris is talking about here. So we really appreciate that. And, I just couldn't imagine having to, lose a child at 8 years old. Can't even fathom that. So we'll definitely keep that family in our prayers. And I got your email about that as well, which I really appreciate that. But yeah, I appreciate you, man. Really do appreciate you for the super chat, but also more importantly for bringing that up. We'll definitely be doing that for you, man. Appreciate you. It's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, folks, that is going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. At 5:05, the guys on IB Nation Sports Beat go live. They're also going to be talking about the NFL Combine. They're also going to be talking a little bit of quarterback talk, talking about CJ Carr. So be sure to tune in to them tonight at 5:05. Tomorrow, Brian and I will be back at 1 o'clock with the Friday Free-for-All mailbag. So get your questions ready. Make sure you guys come correct because I'm very excited for this week's mailbag with everything that's been happening lately. Now, on your way out of here, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, the best way to stay in tune and the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com. Have a wonderful evening. Until tomorrow at 1, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.